On May 11, 2025, an unprecedented event shook the world. The United States, once considered a beacon of democracy, was placed on the CIVICUS Monitor International Human Rights Watch List. This marked a stark departure from the nation's historical role as a champion of human rights and sent shockwaves across the globe. The CIVICUS Monitor, a respected international alliance, downgraded the U.S. civic space rating to narrowed, a designation reserved for countries where the government actively seeks to restrict fundamental freedoms. This decision was a culmination of years of escalating attacks on democratic institutions and norms, culminating in a deeply troubling trajectory for the nation. The inclusion of the U.S. on this list alongside countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Pakistan, and Serbia underscores the severity of the situation. No longer can the U.S. claim the moral high ground on the world stage, its reputation tarnished by its own actions. This fall from grace is a stark reminder that democracy is a fragile construct, vulnerable to erosion from within. The CIVICUS Monitor's decision was not made lightly. It followed years of careful observation and documentation of a steady decline in the U.S. quote. As commitment to democratic principles, the organization cited a pattern of government actions aimed at undermining the rule of law, suppressing dissent, and silencing critical voices. These actions have created a climate of fear and intimidation, where citizens are afraid to exercise their fundamental rights for fear of reprisal. The Trump administration's policies have been identified as the primary driver of this decline. A series of executive orders, often characterized by their disregard for established norms and international agreements, have chipped away at the foundations of American democracy. These orders, often enacted with little to no public discourse or debate, have targeted everything from environmental regulations to immigration policies, often with devastating consequences for vulnerable communities. One of the most alarming trends has been the administration's systematic attempts to dismantle institutions that hold power in check. The judiciary, the press, and civil society organizations have all faced relentless attacks, their independence and legitimacy called into question. This erosion of trust in democratic institutions is particularly dangerous, as it undermines the very fabric of American society. The administration's assault on the federal workforce has further weakened the government's ability to function effectively and serve its citizens. Mass firings of career civil servants and the appointment of loyalists to key positions have created a culture of fear and self-censorship within government agencies. This has resulted in a brain drain of experienced professionals and a decline in the quality of governance. The administration's drastic cuts to funding for organizations supporting marginalized communities, including the near dismantling of USAID, have further exacerbated existing inequalities. These cuts have left countless individuals and families without access to essential services and support, undermining their ability to thrive. The consequences of these actions are being felt acutely by ordinary Americans. The right to peaceful assembly, enshrined in the First Amendment, has been repeatedly violated, with authorities cracking down on protests with increasing force. Journalists have faced unprecedented levels of hostility and obstruction, their ability to report freely on matters of public interest severely curtailed. The media, often referred to as the Fourth Estate for its role in holding power to account, has been a particular target of the administration's ire. Journalists have been barred from press briefings, subjected to verbal abuse, and even physically assaulted for simply doing their jobs. The administration's attempts to discredit and delegitimize the press pose a grave threat to the free flow of information, essential for a healthy democracy. The judiciary, too, has not been spared. Judges who have ruled against the administration have been publicly vilified and threatened, their decisions dismissed as politically motivated. This blatant disregard for the separation of powers has undermined the rule of law and eroded public trust in the judicial system. The administration's attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have further marginalized already vulnerable communities. By rolling back protections and defunding programs aimed at promoting equality, the administration has sent a clear message that discrimination is acceptable. This has created a climate of fear and uncertainty for minority groups who feel increasingly targeted and unprotected. The implications of the U.S. decline extend far beyond its borders. As a global superpower, the US has historically played a critical role in promoting democracy and human rights around the world. However, the Trump administration's America First agenda has signaled a retreat from this role, with the US withdrawing from international agreements and institutions. The decision to withdraw from the UN Human Rights Council, a body tasked with upholding human rights globally, was widely condemned as a betrayal of American values. This move, along with the administration's cozying up to authoritarian leaders, has emboldened dictators and human rights abusers around the world. The message is clear. The US is no longer a reliable partner in the fight for human rights. The administration's decision to slash funding for international aid and development programs has had a devastating impact on some of the world's poorest and most vulnerable populations. These cuts have undermined efforts to combat poverty, disease, and hunger, and have left millions of people at risk. The U.S. quote, S retreat from its global leadership role has created a vacuum that is being filled by authoritarian powers eager to advance their own interests at the expense of human rights. The inclusion of the U.S. on the CIVICUS Monitor watch list is a wake-up call, a stark reminder that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires constant vigilance and active participation from citizens to protect and defend it. The future of American democracy, and indeed the future of human rights globally, hangs in the balance.